Life, sooner or later, will force the truth to come out. So if it seems to you that you will never be caught, then this is a deep misconception. My wife thought that I was naive and that she would be able to keep her infidelity a secret. But life gave me circumstances that made me find out everything. On a stunning autumn afternoon, my daughter's high school soccer team commanded a 5-2 advantage against their fierce rivals, Frost, deep into the second half. Carrie, my youngest child, had netted 2 goals already and seemed poised for a hat trick as she advanced down the field with only one defender and the goalie standing in her way. With bated breath, her mother and I cheered loudly as she closed in on the Frost goal. Carrie's golden ponytail danced behind her as she sprinted, executing a clever feint to the right before swiftly veering left, deftly switching the ball to her left foot. It appeared that all the investment we had made in soccer camps was about to yield returns once more when, in a last-ditch effort, the Frost defender, thoroughly outplayed, recklessly lunged at my daughter, sending her crashing to the ground. Twisting in midair, she bounced off the turf, coming to a halt after a couple of rolls. The referee promptly awarded a penalty, prompting both coaches to leap to their feet. I stood up in the stands, observing as Carrie clutched her right leg and let out a scream of pain. When the referee halted the game, I dashed onto the field to reach my daughter, who continued to cry out. Embracing her tightly, I watched as the team's trainer examined her leg. When Carrie screamed again, the trainer swiftly retrieved her phone and called for an ambulance. Holding her close, I comforted her while she sobbed. Soon after, my wife Tracy joined us on the field. Less than 5 minutes later, the ambulance arrived, pulling up to the group of adults surrounding Carrie. She was loaded into the vehicle, and I followed, instructing my wife to meet us at the hospital. Upon arrival, Carrie was taken directly to X-ray. It was determined that her right fibula was broken, requiring orthopedic surgery to realign the bones, termed an open reduction. Carrie cried, realizing her sports season was over. Despite my efforts to console her, she remained inconsolable. While awaiting the arrival of an orthopedic specialist, a nurse examined the array of bruises Carrie had amassed on her legs throughout the season. It's not uncommon for soccer players to sport bruises, particularly on their legs, given the physical nature of the sport. The nurse then turned her attention to the numerous bruises on Carrie's arms, prompting her to inquire about them. After questioning Carrie, the nurse conferred quietly with another colleague. Distracted by comforting a distressed 12-year-old, the narrator didn't fully register the whispered conversation at the time. A moment later, one of the 2 nurses who were whispering approached me and quietly inquired if I had observed any weight loss in Carrie. I had indeed noticed a slight decrease, but I assumed it was due to the vigorous activity involved in soccer games and practices. I nodded in acknowledgement, and she returned to the other nurse, continuing their conversation in hushed tones. Shortly after, the orthopedic doctor arrived, reviewed the X-rays, and began issuing instructions. Carrie was then taken to the operating room, while Tracy and I proceeded to a waiting area. When Tracy and I were eventually permitted to join Carrie in the recovery room, she was still groggy. We stayed by her side for another 2 hours before heading home for the night. The doctor assured us that the operation had gone well and that we could bring our daughter home in a couple of days. The following day, I headed to my accounting job while Tracy remained at home, heading straight to the hospital to be with Carrie. About an hour into my workday, Tracy phoned me, informing me that the doctor wanted to speak with both of us. I was puzzled. I thought the orthopedic surgeon had confirmed the success of the surgery. Perhaps there was something about rehabilitation he wanted to discuss. Upon arriving at my daughter's room, I kissed both Tracy and Carrie. Moments later, Dr. Ben Rao entered, which confused me since Carrie's orthopedic surgeon was Dr. James Rinken. Dr. Rao requested Tracy and me to join him in a small conference room. "What's the matter, doctor?" I inquired immediately. Dr. Rao lowered his gaze, took a deep breath, then looked back at us. I sensed then that the news wasn't going to be favorable. "We need to conduct further tests because we suspect Carrie may have leukemia," he stated softly. Tracy burst into tears, and I suddenly felt as though I couldn't breathe. This news was perhaps the most devastating since my parents informed me of my maternal grandfather's passing when I was 12. Together with Dr. Rao, Tracy and I returned to Carrie's room to explain to her that the doctors needed to perform additional tests. We refrained from giving Carrie a specific reason, desperately hoping that we would never have to disclose the truth to her. We chose not to inform Carrie's older siblings about the doctor's suspicions, though we did inform them both that she was undergoing additional testing. Carrie's older brother Arnie, 19, a sophomore at Michigan State, was informed about the leg break and the extra testing over the phone. He offered to come home for a few days, but we reassured him it wasn't necessary, maintaining our optimism. However, Carrie's older sister, Ellie, 17, a junior in high school, could sense our concern despite our attempts to appear upbeat. Being the youngest in the family, Carrie, officially Karen, received plenty of attention, even from her siblings. Ellie often included her in activities with her friends, and Arnie not only acted as her protector, but also dedicated hours to teaching her sports like a guy. Carrie didn't throw a run like a girl, excelling in basketball, football, or street hockey with the toughness of any boy. Arnie took immense pride in his younger sister. 2 days later, we received confirmation of the grim news. Tracy, Ellie, and I convened what would become the most significant family gathering we'd ever had in the living room. We unanimously concluded that we had to inform Carrie of the truth without delay. After consulting Arnie and receiving his concurrence, we realized the gravity of the situation. It was a rare sight to see Arnie so emotional, not since he was 10 years old and got hit by a baseball, leaving a painful welt on his back, had I witnessed him cry like that. After a brief pause, he apologized to me, expressing regret for his tears and absence during such a crucial moment for his sister. The following morning, I felt like a member of a firing squad as we, along with the doctor, entered Carrie's room. Although Dr. Rao had volunteered to deliver the somber news, our family deliberated and decided that one of us should take on the task. It fell upon me to perform what was perhaps the most daunting responsibility I've ever faced. Tracy and Ellie sat beside me, tears streaming down their faces, and even Dr. Rao appeared visibly moved. Surprisingly, Carrie received the news with remarkable composure, occasionally seeking clarification from Dr. Rao, who responded softly, "That settles it then. I've got this, Dad." Oh, to possess the boundless enthusiasm and courage of a 14-year-old. 9 months later, Carrie's situation hadn't improved much. Dr. Rao broached the topic of a bone marrow transplant for the first time. We had done some research and knew that siblings had a 1 in 4 chance of being a match. Arnie and Ellie were tested immediately, but neither matched. This meant we had to rely on the slim chance of finding a match on the National Bone Marrow Registry, unless... I had been quietly monitoring Rick Gardino for over 14 years, ever since the day I confronted him in the back parking lot of First National Financial. After our altercation, I left him on the ground near his car, intending never to cross paths with him again. Yet now I, actually Carrie, needed him, or at least his offspring. Gardino now resided and worked 2 towns away from us, about an hour to the west. I knew he wouldn't be thrilled to see me. Frankly, I wasn't thrilled about having to see him either. "I'm at a loss for where to begin, Tommy," Tracy whispered, barely audible, one Saturday night after putting the kids to bed. We sat in the family room with me sipping rye and her sipping Merlot. She had mentioned she needed to talk. I had no idea what to expect. "I'm pregnant, Tommy. There's no sugarcoating it. I messed up. I really screwed up, Tommy." I sat there in shock, unable to speak. Shock. After Ellie was born 5 years ago, Tracy had asked me to get a vasectomy, and I had agreed. Obviously, this child she was carrying wasn't mine. When my brain finally kicked back into gear, I felt the bile rising in my throat. I barely made it to the bathroom before last night's dinner made a reappearance. I teddied myself up and returned to the family room, finding Tracy still there, visibly uncomfortable. Resuming my seat, I shot her a pointed look, prompting her to speak. "I'm 2 months pregnant," she murmured. "You know I'm against abortion, and I know you are too. What are our options?" "Our options? Who's our, Tracy? Are we talking about you and me, or you and your partner?" Tracy appeared stricken, and I suspected her distress was genuine. "So who's he, Tracy? How long has this been going on?" I demanded, my tone harsh. My stomach twisted. I was seething with anger. I was on the verge of using physical force like never before. Her expression changed from shocked to scared. Ah, Rick Giardino from work. Do you remember a trip to London a couple of months ago? Yes, I can put it all together, I muttered. You had an unprotected intimacy with him. How many times, genius? We haven't used protection for 100 years since you had a vasectomy. I guess I just stopped thinking about it. I guess we got carried away, maybe 5 times, she admitted hoarsely. In 5 days? You're moving fast, I snapped back. Those were the only Timas, I swear, she pleaded. I covered my face with my hands. Whether I believed in all this or not, it didn't matter now. My once perfect world has irreparably collapsed. I'm sorry, Tommy. Really. I never meant to hurt you, Tracy apologized. You cheated on me with another man several times, and now you regret it. What the hell did you think would happen when I found out? I shouted. Shock showed on her face. I had never talked to her like that before. I didn't expect you to find out. You wouldn't have known if I hadn't gotten pregnant. It didn't mean anything. It was just intimacy, she blurted out. So if I had never found out, everything would have been fine? I asked. What have I done to deserve such disrespect? I didn't think so, Tommy. I still love you. Our relationship has soared, do you understand? It was just something else. A little bit of excitement. It's just a game. Oh, so we should have discussed our problems, and maybe I could get some privileges too. She muttered. Great reaction. So what now, Tommy? Well, in an ideal world, I would have killed him, but I know it's unrealistic. And if I divorce you, I'll lose Arnie and Ellie. I can't let that happen. I entered our bedroom and packed a suitcase while Tracy sat in tears in the family room. 2 weeks holed up in a shabby hotel room didn't offer any fresh perspectives on my predicament. I longed for my kids deeply, speaking to them every night over the phone. Each evening after their updates, Tracy would tearfully plead for my return. Struggling to juggle your affairs while being a single parent? I blurted out one night. Tracy dissolved into tears on the other end of the line. Again. God, I was weary of that routine. Why the hell are you crying? You're the one who caused this by breaking your vows, I shouted at her. Numbers have a calming effect. They can immerse you, offering a temporary escape from troubles. My work provided that refuge. Numbers are devoid of emotion. I craved clarity, and numbers provide just that. Eventually, I arrived at a solution. Not necessarily a good one, but a solution nonetheless. I approached Rick Giardino, vice president of First National Financial, in the employee parking lot as he was about to get into his Lexus. Despite his larger size, I met him with a mixture of surprise and anger. After hitting him 2 hard blows, I heard him scream, and then I hit him hard, causing him to collapse to the floor. After that, I loudly stated my point. Listen, I shouted. If you get close to my wife Tracy again, I'll make sure that your next meeting with me is much worse. Do you understand? He groaned in apparent agreement when I noticed that other employees had witnessed the altercation, which probably prompted them to call the police. After leaving the scene, I headed home. Tracy was shocked to see me back, but she had to wait her turn to get attention, as Arnie and Ellie literally stunned me with their reaction. When Tracy reached out to hug me, I held her back, and she was clearly offended. I assured her that we would discuss everything after we put the children to bed. I brought out the rye and wine for our conversation. Though I call it a conversation, it was more of a monologue from me after confirming she still loved me and wanted to stay married. I proposed that if she reaffirmed her commitment, we would remain married, and I would raise her baby as my own, on the condition she never revealed the child's true paternity to Rick. This revelation shocked her, as our families and closest friends knew I had a vasectomy, essentially exposing me as Tracy's cuckold. I explained that while I wasn't comfortable raising another man's child, I didn't want to miss out on watching my children grow up due to her mistake. I cautioned her that I wouldn't tolerate another indiscretion, and regaining my trust might be a long process, if it happened at all. I assure you, Tommy, I'll be the most devoted wife, and I'll never give you a reason to leave us again, she exclaimed. We'll have to wait and see, Tracy. We'll have to wait and see, he replied. I realized I had made things easier for Tracy when Rick resigned from his job the day after our discussion. A month later, they relocated as he took on a new job. It seemed Rick wasn't well liked at his former workplace, as the police never showed up after I confronted him in the parking lot, despite several of his co-workers witnessing the altercation. Both of our families weren't oblivious, so there was a lot of concern expressed when we announced Tracy's pregnancy. The inquiries started from my family, led by my mother. She was furious at Tracy, to put it mildly. "She's making a fool out of you, Tommy. Everyone knows you're being deceived," she yelled at me over the phone after we shared the news of the pregnancy. I was taken aback by my mother's familiarity with the term cuckold. While I couldn't entirely disagree with her, I elaborated on my perspective to my family members, and they grasped my point. However, this didn't mean they approved of it, especially my father, who was clear in expressing his disapproval. "You certainly didn't inherit being timid from me, Tom." At least there was no shouting from Tracy's family directed at me. I suspect they were too ashamed of Tracy's actions to even meet my gaze. We had never disclosed my vasectomy to our other children, so we simply informed them of Tracy's pregnancy. They took the news well. Rick's complexion and hair shade are darker compared to mine, but I was fortunate that Carrie bore a striking resemblance to her mother, featuring similar facial traits, blonde hair, and fair skin. Nobody even questioned it. Moreover, it was beneficial that from a very young age, Carrie was deeply attached to me, often trailing behind me like a loyal puppy whenever I was home from work. She was charming, a bit of a tomboy, and just as lovable as my other two children. I truly believe I treated her no differently from Arnie and Ellie, except perhaps for indulging her a bit more given her status as the youngest. Now, my child was in a life-and-death struggle. I required more than Rick Gardino's personal anguish. Aware that Gardino and his spouse had 3 children, I realized they could potentially be half-siblings to my Carrie, giving them a 1 in 8 chance of being a tissue match. The following evening after dinner, I drove to his residence. He visibly recoiled upon opening the door and finding me on his doorstep. I haven't been near her, I swear," he exclaimed, raising his hands defensively. "I know you haven't. I'm not here to confront you. I need your assistance." I could see the surprise almost causing him to faint. "Did she finally leave you for someone better, you jerk?" he retorted with a smirk. "I don't need you for her. I need you for someone else, my younger daughter. And actually, I don't need you, just some samples from your children." Asswipe proved to be more astute than I initially thought. He quickly grasped the essence of my words. "I have another daughter, and she's experiencing some kind of medical emergency. Damn! Why didn't she inform me? I had a right to be informed." At that moment, his wife appeared at the door. He raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Is everything all right, Rick?" she inquired. I glared intensely at Rick. "Yeah, babe. Everything's fine. Just an old friend from the past," he replied. "We're going to grab a quick drink at the line. Be back soon." I motioned towards my car. We drove in silence for a couple of miles before taking a table at the back of the bar. "You weren't entitled to know anything," I stated after we each had a shot of Jack Daniels. "She's my daughter. Always has been. Always will be. That was the price Tracy paid for staying in our marriage. You paid in suffering. So why now? What do you want?" "My child needs a bone marrow transplant. My other kids aren't matches. We need to have your kids tested. They each have a 1 in 8 chance of matching. It's the best shot my Carrie has." Asswipe lowered his gaze to the table. In normal circumstances, I would have had to coerce approval from him. However, this request was for a child. Technically, his child. "I understand time is of the essence. I'll have them tested tomorrow," he murmured. "Thank you," I replied in the same subdued tone. He never inquired about seeing any photos of Carrie. I never offered to show him any. We sat in silence until we finished our drinks. Then I drove him home. We shook hands before he exited my car. I assured him I wouldn't divulge anything to his wife. He could come up with any excuse he wanted. I had given him the email address of the hospital where Carrie was. I didn't anticipate it. Tom, can you explain why I received 4 tissue samples from the Gardino family? They all tested negative, as anticipated, given our lack of familiarity with them, Dr. Rao inquired during our phone call a few days later. What do you mean you don't know who they are? I responded, my tone escalating. They're all related to Carrie by blood. One is her biological father, and the other 3 are her half-siblings. Oh, darn, Dr. Rao interjected. I suppose I didn't anticipate that. Tom, I hate to break it to you, but none of those individuals are biologically related to Carrie. Why did you assume they were? Damn it, Doc. Because I'm the most foolish man alive. That's why, I yelled. Tom, the doctor called out, pulling me back to reality. Don't make any rash decisions. Too late for that, Doc. She betrayed me and got pregnant, claimed it was Rick Gardino's child. She begged for forgiveness, swore she still loved me, and I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. I understand this feels devastating, Tom, but perhaps there's still a chance to salvage something from this. We just need to determine if her lover has offspring, and if we can conduct tests promptly. There might still be hope. But Carrie's condition is deteriorating rapidly. I'm on it, Doc. I'll keep you informed of developments. After 40 minutes, I burst into the First National Financial office, rushing past the reception desk as if my pants were ablaze. The security guard attempted to halt me but couldn't catch up as I sprinted to the elevator and pressed the button for the 2nd floor. Exiting the elevator, I barged into the office of Tracy Sheehy, the vice president. End the call, Tracy, immediately, I bellowed at her. She complied instantly, staring at me with fear in her eyes. I must have been breathing heavily like an enraged bull and drooling like a St. Bernard. I need a name now. It wasn't Rick Gardino. He and his kids have no connection to Carrie whatsoever. No further explanation was necessary. She broke into tears. I wasn't in the mood. Cut the fake tears or I'll come around that desk and give you a slap. If it wasn't Rick, then it must have been Chester Dowd. He's a First National employee from London. The night I didn't sleep with Rick, I slept with him. We only had intercourse once. I'm sorry, Tommy, truly. I couldn't bring myself to tell you about the second man. I wasn't sure you'd forgive me for one. I knew you'd divorce me if there were 2. We'll address that later. Right now, you need to locate this Dowd guy and have him and any children undergo a bone marrow test. Contact your HR department and get them on it immediately. Dr. Rao says Carrie's time is running out. Chester Dowd had left First National about 3 years after his encounter with Tracy. Tracy had to explain to the First National HR department why she needed to reach Dowd, and they assisted her in obtaining the information. She then explained her requirements to Dowd, who pledged that he and his 2 children would undergo testing. The swabs for Dowd and his children arrived a week later. While they were related, their tests didn't match. In the following weeks, my wife and I didn't engage in much communication. Eventually, her curiosity prompted her to inquire how I managed to locate Gardino so quickly. I've always had his whereabouts, I responded. Trust but verify. I just wasn't aware of number 2, or I would have found him too. She lowered her head to her desk. Our routine consisted of work and visiting Carrie's hospital room. Arnie occasionally returned home to be with his sister, and Ellie spent much of her time at the hospital as well. Dr. Rao made frequent visits. We sensed the situation was deteriorating rapidly when Carrie's usual wit faded, and then. Following what Dr. Rao described as a miraculous event, Carrie recovered, albeit it took nearly a year. A few months subsequent to Dr. Rao's declaration of her full remission, I convened a family meeting with the children during which I disclosed all the details regarding Tracy's affair to them. The elder 2 had already sensed that something was amiss, prompting me to believe that Carrie should also be informed. It proved immensely challenging to reveal to my youngest that she wasn't biologically mine, yet I emphasized to all 3 that my affection for them remained unchanged. Arnie and Ellie enveloped Carrie in a comforting embrace as she wept uncontrollably for a few minutes. Then I observed her expression harden as her tears ceased. All right. So you forgave her once, but none of us are assuming that's happening again, right? Arnie inquired. I solemnly shook my head, sparing further words. So, do I get my own room sorted, Dad? 'Cause I'm definitely coming with you, Carrie announced. At 15 years old, Carrie had the option to select which parent she preferred as her primary caregiver. Given that I had recently learned she wasn't biologically mine, her announcement caught me off guard. Tears welled up in my eyes, and soon it was my turn to cry. Before long, I felt the embrace of 3 sets of arms around me. Once I composed myself, I gazed at all 3 children, but directed my words to Carrie. It's clear that your mother and I have been in communication with your biological father, who didn't hesitate at all when your mother requested him and his children to undergo testing promptly when we were searching for tissue matches. He wasn't even aware of your existence until we found him, so you can't blame him for that. That responsibility falls on me as much as your mother's because I instructed her not to inform Gardino, who she claimed was your biological father. Therefore, she wouldn't have informed Chet Dowdy, especially since she never acknowledged to me that he was in the picture. He has since informed his wife about you, and their entire family is eager to meet you if you're willing. I believe we could plan a vacation to Great Britain later this year for the 4 of us. We embraced once more. Tracy actually attempted to contest the divorce, citing that I had forgiven her for the affair with Gardino, and the Dowd incident occurred during that same period. Are you joking, you promiscuous person? You don't get a 2-for-1 special deal on this, Tracy, I remarked. You betrayed me with 2 different men on multiple occasions. 1 is my limit. Carrie spent very little time with Tracy post-divorce. All 3 kids shared the sentiment that their mother had wronged me, but Carrie took it the hardest. I later discovered that Tracy once complained to Carrie, accusing me of sabotaging their relationship out of spite. I made a mistake, Carrie, I'm sorry. But that's no reason for your father to be so mean, Carrie told me. Really, Mom? You slept with 2 men in a week while you were on a business trip and you got pregnant. And Dad accepted it, like the man he is, and stayed married to you so that we could stay a family. He gave me his love and his name, even though he shouldn't have done either. How about you just shut your mouth? I think Tracy didn't take it very well. I probably should have reprimanded Carrie for saying shut your mouth, but on the other hand, she's 15 years old. And I don't completely disagree with what she said. During a junior high school soccer game on a late fall afternoon, my daughter sprinted down the field with determination, leaving only 1 defender and the opposing goaltender in her path. With excitement, I stood up from my seat in the bleachers, cheering her on as she executed a clever move, faking to the right before swiftly shifting to the left and outmaneuvering the defender. The goalie hesitated momentarily, then attempted a dive to the left after feinting to the right. However, my daughter had anticipated her move and swiftly struck the ball hard and low into the lower left corner of the goal. My wife and I both stood up in celebration, exchanging high fives before she sat back down. I glanced towards the team bench and shared a smile with the coach, Carrie, who responded with a triumphant gesture pointing at me. I returned the gesture with a smile of my own. At 26 years old, Carrie found herself leading the girls' soccer team at John Adams Junior High School as head coach. Overcoming leukemia in a remarkable manner, she excelled in high school soccer, securing a scholarship to Duke University, where she played for 4 years and graduated with a degree in education. Now, 4 years later, she returned to coach the same junior high team she once played for over a decade ago. I took a seat, wrapping my arm around my wife, giving her a gentle squeeze. Lorraine responded with her customary radiant smile. My affection for this woman, and for her daughter, whom I regarded as my own, knew no bounds. Lorraine entered my life 3 years post my divorce from Tracy, bringing a refreshing change. I had scarcely ventured into the dating scene until meeting her. Unlike Tracy, Lorraine was a complete contrast, tall and slender, with short brown hair. She was 15 years younger at 40 and had an active 8-year-old daughter, Stephanie. Stephanie quickly befriended my daughter, Carrie, who imparted soccer wisdom to her. After a year of dating, I proposed to Lorraine. Having experienced infidelity in her previous marriage of 10 years, she fully understood my values regarding fidelity, trust, and respect. Stephanie resembled Carrie in many ways, and we formed a quick bond. Once again, I found myself embracing the role of a soccer dad to a spirited preteen. My wife and I enjoyed countless hours together, cheering from the bleachers at soccer games.
That's the end of the story. Write your opinion in the comments about this story. It will be interesting for us to read it. Also, do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel so as not to miss new, equally interesting and exciting stories. Good luck!